initiative, and problem solving. What does that have to do with learning a language? What does that have to do with, skill acquisition in sports? Well, in order to get great at a language, right? Right now, the current model in the US is we're just going to give you all this information, right? And so let's go back to what we were talking about with our conversation. I have to take initiative to learn the words that I need to know, right? Let's say, when I was interning, there are certain words I needed to know, right? Or in a certain conversation. So I have to go take initiative. I have to be a problem solver to then go learn how to say my name. I know how to say, I'm trying to just look around. I have new t-shirts today. Would you like to buy one? Right? I have to take the initiative. I have to go problem solve to go figure out how to say that. Now, it's the same thing with basketball skill acquisition. If we're always telling our players, like prescribing them the answers, or if we're always pitching the same pitch, we're not helping our athletes develop decision-making skills. And I'd argue that is going to be the most important, I'm not going to say the most, one of the most important life and job skills in all, the soft skills. You are listening to the Bridging Impact Podcast, transforming leaders on and off the court with host, Coach Furtado. Without further ado, let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Bridging Impact Podcast. And in today's episode, I'm going to break down why and how learning a skill in sports is exactly like how we learn a foreign language, and why most sports trainers and coaches are going about it the wrong way, just like our U.S. education system goes about teaching language the wrong way. So what do I mean by that? Let's start with number one, the lack of experience or the lack of exposure. Okay, so I'm going to talk about language first and then translate it over to the sport of basketball specifically. And we can I'll come up with some other examples for other sports as well. So many of you, I took German in high school. Not many of you took German in high school, but many of you took a foreign language in high school, right? I also took Spanish in college. And so let's see, I did 4 years of German. All I remember is Wie heißt du? It's the only thing I remember. Or and Ich heiße Justin means how are you? My name is Justin. It's all I remember for 4 years of German, right? Very ineffective, I would say. Now, number two, for Spanish. Okay, so I did 3 years of Spanish in college. Now, keep in mind, when I learned Spanish best, and for those that have learned the language as well, the best I ever spoke Spanish was the 2 months that I interned abroad, studied abroad, but it was an internship in Barcelona. That's the best I ever spoke Spanish when I was exposed. I was experiencing Spanish. I couldn't always get away with it, right, with just speaking English. The best way to learn a language is through trial by fire, by being exposed. And it's the same thing if you're trying to become a better shooter in basketball. It's the same thing, right? If you're becoming a better basketball player. And I have a baseball example as well. So the challenge is the way that we are learning, right, how to shoot, how to dribble, how to play basketball is we are segmenting everything, right? So we're just working on perfect form. And let's see. And I'm not saying that this isn't important, but I'm saying this is, if you only do this, then you're not going to get good results. So we're only working on form, just like conjugating a verb, right? Not necessarily always the most effective thing. Not that I'm not saying that working on form is ineffective. What I'm saying, all right, in order to be a great shooter in game, okay, you have to be adaptable. You have to be able to move your feet in different directions. You have to be able to catch passes that are at your knee, that are at your ankles, that are at your head, is at your right, at your left. And how we practice most times when we're training, it's perfect spot shooting over and over and over again, right? Just like a language. Okay, you're going to get good at conjugating verbs. All right, you're going to get good at catching and shooting in place. You will, but it doesn't translate to the game, right? just because I can conjugate verbs doesn't mean I can go to Spain and start speaking fluent Spanish. I haven't been exposed to it enough. So the lack of exposure is what's really killing a lot of athletes' development. And I'm not saying block training, it does, you eventually will become skilled, right? If you do things enough. I'm all about maximizing your time, maximizing athletes' time. How can they get better faster? How can they actually get improved results that are better in game? You have to expose them. So if I'm going to become a better shooter, yes, number one, I do need good form. That is true. And in addition, I need to be able to shoot with defense. I need to be able to understand when to shoot. Is that a good shot? Should I have passed that? There's a lot of different things that go into what actually makes a great shooter, right? That's just more than just shooting a jump shot, right? That's a segmented part of the game. Now, number two, the reason that learning a skill in sports is like learning a foreign language is in order to get great at anything, you have to fail over and over and over again. Now, I'll start with typical training. So, typical training, I'm going to go and use a baseball example. So, what I used to do, I would hit off the pitching machine over and over and over again, right? I got great at hitting fastballs, but I never had to make a decision because I always knew that the machine was going to put ball in, boom, is going to be a fastball. Now, what happens when you play high school baseball is, and I don't currently play it, but I do know that now they're throwing more curveballs than ever, right? So if I am really great at hitting a fastball, but I'm not working on hitting a curveball, I'm not going to be prepared in game if a pitcher is throwing me a curveball. So what's the best way to then practice? It's to fail. It's to put, if I was going to go back right in time, it would be to have two pitching machines right besides each other, or finding some sort of machine or some sort of person, right, that you don't know if it's going to be a fastball or a curveball. Well, you know what? You're going to fail more in practice. I bet I was launching it out of the park. When I knew it was a fastball every time, boom, man. I was building that confidence. I felt great. Well, the problem is that in game that doesn't translate. It's not helping my decision making, right? It's something called perception action coupling. And you have to perceive and then act. So the act is the swing of the bat, the jump shot. Now, in a game, I'm going to come over to a jump shot, right? If I'm going to become a great shooter, I have to get blocked a few times. Oh, I got to be a little quicker. Oh, I got to set my feet, right? It takes time for our brain to learn. It's not just one session, it's over time. And with that, looking over to a foreign language, right? For me, when I'm having a conversation with someone in Spain who's fluent in Spanish, and I can piece together some sentences, and then I can say, "Cómo se dice?" So, how do I say this, right? That's going to help me when I going to talk to someone again, right? Like, let's say I wanted to know how to say, "I am reading this book today." Right? I don't know if I know how to say that right now. I would have to ask them. But then, because I failed, right, I would have the opportunity to then learn from that failure and then, again, become better at speaking that language, right? I'm exposed to failure. I'm exposed to the language all around, right? And so when we're training, we want to make sure we're making training in more game realistic environments where we have to work on our decision making. That's what's really crucial. And lastly, initiative and problem solving. What does that have to do with learning a language? What does that have to do with, skill acquisition in sports? Well, in order to get great at a language, right? Right now, the current model in the US is we're just going to give you all this information, right? And so let's go back to what we were talking about with our conversation. I have to take initiative to learn the words that I need to know, right? Let's say, when I was interning, there are certain words I needed to know, right? Or in a certain conversation. So I have to go take initiative. I have to be a problem solver to then go learn how to say my name. I know how to say, I'm trying to just look around. I have new t-shirts today. Would you like to buy one? Right? I have to take the initiative. I have to go problem solve to go figure out how to say that. Now, it's the same thing with basketball skill acquisition. If we're always telling our players, like prescribing them the answers, or if we're always pitching the same pitch, we're not helping our athletes develop decision-making skills. And I'd argue that is going to be the most important, I'm not going to say the most, one of the most important life and job skills in all, the soft skills. AI is going to be able to do most hard technical skills eventually. Now, what it won't be able to do is have certain decision making and creativity and problem solving and initiative that a human can do. And maybe it can eventually, and I'm scared of that. And that's a podcast episode for a completely different platform. But you get what I'm saying. We need to develop great athletes who are decision makers and problem solvers. And so if you're like, okay, this all sounds great, Justin, but how do I implement this? You implement this through the constraint-led approach. And if you want to learn more about it, look up Transforming Basketball if you're in the basketball world, or if not, I would just look up constraint-led approach in whatever sport you are in. That is going to be the next best step for you. So I appreciate you all for listening. Reach out to me, contact me if you feel like you got something from this. Again, I create this content for coaches and parents to make a greater impact on their athletes. So again, I really appreciate everything you do, right? If you touch one person's life, that makes a difference. So keep going. Coach Furtado out. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Bridging Impact Podcast. We'd love it if you would like, subscribe, leave a comment and a review on whatever platform you're on. It's the best way to help us grow. We appreciate you for doing that. We'll shout you out on social media. I'd also love if you connected with me on social media. Let me know your thoughts. And this is why I do it. I want to share knowledge and wisdom from experienced leaders to people like yourself and myself so we can have this dialogue and move forward, make an impact on the world. So stay tuned, stay subscribed. Cheers.